what drew you to Tyrone? What was the
Well,
title?
Tyrone
Sparkle.
had reached out to me before on LinkedIn
Mhm.
and had said something about something or other, that he had heard my name or something, and that he realized we were going to be at the same event and he hoped we could get together
And
and
just say hello.
just say hello. And from my end, I remembered this. And so I said to the organizers, I need to meet this Tyrone person, except I'm sure I was calling him Tyrone. So I will probably, when I edit this, I'll put some kind of caption. His name is Tyrome, as in Mary, not NE as in Nancy.
Exactly. Exactly.
So Tyrone, what brought you to the Federal Labs Consortium meeting? Why are you like their favorite person, apparently? Because everyone, when I said, well, I need to meet Tyrone, and they go, well, that won't be hard. He's like Mr. Popular. He's around here someplace.
Well, I got to the Federal Lab Consortium through a workshop that I did for NSA. I spent about 20 years in the community, mostly with NGA. I started NSA and blah, blah, blah. Well, I
This
did
would be the intelligence community.
the intelligence community. Yes, ma'am. And so I'm now adjacent to that, and we're doing somebody Steve Blank.
Oh,
With
yes.
with Lean Startup, the hacking for defense work that he's doing. The company that I work for now, we own, that's not quite the right word, but it's the only way I can describe it. We own the technology, we own the trademark. Well, I did a little lunch and learn for the Federal Lab, and I'm an extrovert. I like to talk. I like to teach. I'm a coach by kind of paranaturally a coach. And they were like, oh man, this is fun. And I started talking to folks. Well, last year they needed a MC for their 49th, because it was the first in person since COVID. And they're like, we need somebody who can just bring some energy. Well, turned to me to Paul Zielinski, who was the executive director for the
Yes,
FLC.
I
Like,
met
I
him.
know a guy. And they were like, would you be willing to do that? I'm like, come on, this is like catnip. Right? Life is catnip. That's me. And I had fun. And I know enough about science to be dangerous that I can think through what I had to read and what I had to offer up, and you just have some fun. And so that's how I got. So the second year, this year was their 50th. You were the keynote, which was great. I love the work that you're doing, the energy that you're bringing, Carmen, excuse me. And then I just followed up and just brought it on that evening and had some
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it's a shame I
Did
couldn't stay because I love to hang out at events like that. I'm not a scientist. I don't have any developed math skills, but I love to just sit in these environments and listen to meetings because stuff does penetrate.
Yeah, yeah. I agree that I'm not. I started off as a chemistry major in undergrad, and nobody talked in the lab, and I was dying. I was dying. So I ended up taking the 6-year route to get through college. And not that I was dumb, college just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, I got a master's, and I went on to get a master's degree and started a doctoral program. But nonetheless, I am curious. And I think that even in my LinkedIn profile behind my picture says hashtag be curious. So I think that's what's killing our country right now, right? Is the lack of curiosity about things, about each other, about ideas. And so I'm just
Yeah.
stay curious.
You know what shuts down curiosity really effectively is fear. And I think that's the issue. And I think there's the lack of curiosity, even among scientists, is based on fear. In my own experience, trying to talk to scientists about things that they're going to find weird, I know they're going to find them weird, but I'm
Yeah.
talking to them about it anyway. The fear comes up first, and then anger.
Mhm.
And the anger is a real defense against curiosity. And I think the anger is based on, look, if what you're talking about is real or important, I would be studying it. And so it gets into this identity,
Yes.
egoic place. And to me, what breaks people out of that is that kind of welcoming, effusive energy. And my question for you is, at the Federal Labs thing, did you get people to dance? Did you try to get people to dance?
It was so funny. They wanted me to do a Texas top line dance.
Yeah.
My problem was right. That was Carmen. That was Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
Monday,
You
I
had,
went to
yeah,
the went to the chiropractor, and he stretched me left when I should have gone right, and I could hardly stand.
right.
I couldn't dance. I literally was like, I can't do this. I love to dance. It's no problem. But I just literally couldn't. But I think what I tried to do was be infusive because they had a really cool, it was like I had to talk a little bit and they threw some music. And so I was like, it was like any time over the last 50 years, 60s through 2000s. So I was like, y'all remember this song? And dance. And I, with my feet firmly planted on the stage,
I hear
I'd
you.
move my shoulders.
Top dancing. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome.
Otherwise, it was not going to make it.
It does make a difference. Laughter and dance and anything that's not that doesn't get the left brain fixated on the fear of not being in control.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it really is. I think the lack of curiosity is not really lack of curiosity. It's a fear of I'm playing with my panda as I
Oh,
talk.
it's very
It's
nice.
it's a fear of not being in control of the outcome and not knowing and just being in student mind, which is
Mm.
considered an old-fashioned place to be. We're supposed to kind of know all the things now in the modern era.
You're
And
speaking my language. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple of things that are running around in my head. I belong to an organization. I'm now a fellow. Don't ask me why they would do it, but they made me a fellow, and absolutely appreciative. It's called the A.K. Rice Institute for the Study of Social Systems, and so we look at unconscious group process and what happens in groups, and the unconscious part. One of my now fellows is a psychiatrist who took over an organization, a psychiatric hospital, probably 20 years ago now. And he said the first thing he had to do is to listen to others to understand how they might be right, not why they are right.
that's
And
right.
I'm like, boing. When he said that,
Right,
it's kind of
right.
like, and it makes absolute sense that instead of why, now I'm putting you in opposition to me.
That's
I'm
right.
right, you're wrong. But
Right.
how puts me
I
in
love
a
that.
position of how might you be right? I still don't understand, but I need to take into effect that how might you be right? Where what it prestages curiosity if I ask the question how.
Yeah.
And I have taken that, and I only heard him say this about 2 months ago, and I was like, Ed, this is amazing. This is something I know, but I never really heard it expressed like that. And I think if we took the time to go, well, how might you be right? It allows me to kind of level set what your thinking is and what my thinking is. And like, oh, you actually have a point. I don't agree with it, but you actually have a point, and I understand how you come to this engagement.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's great. So I don't know, Tyrone, if you're familiar with Julia's background,
Oh,
but she's got a
just
deep science background, and you might be Goldilocks. You might be like right in the middle of that.
I think so.
Uh, and I'm like, whatever. But I'm curious. So
Whatever.
I'm going to ask the question of Julia is, and then I would love you to answer it is, what are you most curious about right now? And I
Mm.
think that will get into your what you're interested in. Julia.
You want me to go first?
Yes, so that Tyrone has a little more context.
Sure. Although I bet he knows. I mean, I kind of want to know what he's interested in
Okay,
without
well then
saying.
Tyrone, you go first. What are you most curious about?
I am curious because of my everyday job and because I have two kids who are two boys that are college age, and understanding where the arc of the story is for Black and Brown people in America. How do we create generational impact?
Mhm.
I'm not concerned about generational wealth because wealth is my ability to make a decision, right? But how do we create spaces for generational impact in ways that we haven't given ourselves permission, and I do mean permission to really think in that way. Julie, I did get a chance to look at your background, and you remind me of Diane Zohar, the stuff that you're
Ooh,
doing, right,
thank you.
around this idea of quantum, this
Yep.
quantum thinking,
Yep.
and I am not looking. I'm always curious and understanding the problem to be solved, not the solution, because I don't think if you pre-stage a solution, you'll just be running around looking for a problem. But truly understanding the problem of where is it that kids, my sons who are about to be 19 and 21, where are they in creating sustainable communities for themselves, sustainable world for themselves. That what feels like right now, just listening to what feels like a major cognitive and social shift in America, how are they going to survive? And I feel really emotional about that because it's not just my kids. I teach at a local regional historically black college university here in Maryland, and I'm looking at those kids. I'm like, how are they going to make it? And so I'm really curious about that. What can I do to make that happen?
That's
Mhm.
awesome. I have a 24-year-old son, and I'm doing a new thing on Fridays on LinkedIn where I promote a Gen Z person, like
Mhm.
just that might be looking for a job or whatever that I meet and I think is awesome. And I would love to meet your sons and promote them if that's of
Cool.
interest. But also, I have been thinking a lot about how Gen Z contains the seeds in it, not just of surviving, but of thriving
Yeah.
by creating a new culture. So they're not going to survive. I guess let me put this up another way. The culture's not going to survive them.
Yeah.
They're going to thrive because they're creating a new culture. So the culture is in fact one that is on the way out, and you could feel it. These are the death throes of a culture in which humility, love, compassion are considered weak.
Oh my God. Whew. Yeah. 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 And how do we, in a world where Moore's law has been violated to the point where it's now down to minutes and not weeks or months, how do you, the only thing that's left is your ability to connect, right? So I was listening, went to San Francisco for an event, and on the way out, I was listening to the CEO of NVIDIA, and he said, it used to be reading in right before the pandemic, several years before the pandemic, it was reading, writing, arithmetic, and coding. And he's like, why would you want to do that? It's reading, writing, arithmetic, and AI, which means that you need to know how to do prompts, which means you know how to be curious, which means you know how to have a critical way of thinking about the world, which means you probably have to have some empathy about the other and what's curious about the other. And if you can't have that, now you're at a waste. But to your point, Julia, now you end up with people who are like, no, I'm right. What? There's 7 billion people on the planet. How are you right?
What
Except
are the chances?
Yes. Yeah. That's right. What are the chances?
you have 1 in 7 billion perspective on the
Yeah.
world, but you
Yeah.
ain't right.
Well, so and that's the thing is even the concept of right. So I guess what I'm interested in the world of what I'm really interested right now in the world of science is not really a scientific topic per se. In other words, one that a scientist would study, except maybe a historian of science, but more like the social, emotional,
Oh my
cultural
God.
change that's happening in science, where scientists are saying the stuff that we're saying. Younger scientists are coming up and saying the system is bankrupt, academic publishing is bankrupt, the caste system in the lab where in the sciences where you work forever and you never make any money and then you're basically an indentured servant to this person, that's bankrupt. The whole tier 1 research institution that allows you to turn in your soul in exchange for status is bankrupt. And 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 in fact, it may be the case that putting a person in front of a room in front of a bunch of people is not actually the most effective way to train. Maybe I've been working one-on-one with ChatGPT to learn all sorts of things that I'm interested in, and it's a fantastic tutor as long as I have the critical thinking skills and the
Yes.
curiosity to drive that
Yes.
training. And so really teaching, so I come to that teaching, I mean, we're both coming to education, but teaching basic psychology, teaching human interaction, teaching the ways that you can model someone else's mind in your own mind, theory of mind, but more extravagant than that, more involved than that. And the way that compassion feeds into that, sort of the law of love and how that works. Teaching that is going to be what AIs do, but also what humans are going to need to do. Like it needs to be reinforced all over the place. And I think that creates a whole new culture where we sort of say, hey, we're too smart now for war. We're too smart now to leave part of the country and part of the world in slavery and starving and we're too smart to have these inequities where the major inequities that I don't even want to talk about because it's gross. But we're just too smart for that because we understand the power of compassion. We understand how that affects the next generation. So I think that is where we're going. I'm not even sure about reading and arithmetic, honestly.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a colleague who has just become the secretariat for the International Psychoanalytic Association.
Oh,
And
wow. Is that in Chicago?
no, this is out of Switzerland or
Oh, okay. The
Austria.
international one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the international started with Freud, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's very interested in rise not rhizomes, the mycelial relationship.
Mycelial networks.
Yes,
Yeah.
mycelial networks.
Yeah.
And he's taking um the natural mycelial networks of what happens in trees and mushrooms and looking at what that might mean for human relationships,
Mm.
right? And I am curious about, and it comes to mind with what you're talking about. And so that curiosity about what's below
Yeah.
and what's in between,
Yeah.
the liminal space between people. I
Yeah.
think the tool known as large language models, the large language model tool set,
Yeah.
I think is a way for us to investigate the liminal spaces that words in our limited way that we put together words.
Yeah.
The large language models put them together. If
Yeah.
we are open enough, I believe, if we're open enough to understand that we are limited in our language models, our internal language models, but that we have these large language models can pull them together, we might
Yeah.
actually discover things about ourselves that heretofore we were like, right?
Exactly.
How do we take those things in, and how do
Yeah.
we? And there's a humility. I think that your understanding of humility as a way, and your love, which I think is a so underappreciated notion, right? The curiosity of the other. A late mentor of mine talked about that in with good consultants, you have to love the person, your client, more than they love themselves,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
And when you put
Because
yourself
you're
in
also
that,
modeling that for them.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And but we know what happens in this world when you love too much, you can be sacrificed, right?
But let's talk about the definition of love, right? And um, so I wrote a piece on this I should send you. It's about 5 ideas about unconditional love. But
Oh my God.
one of them is, one of them is about how we misapprehend unconditional love sometimes, and we think that it means sort of self-sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And unconditional love has to simultaneously, because it's unconditioned on the person, it has to apply to both yourself and others at the same time. So if you're going to unconditionally love someone else, you're also stepping into unconditional love for yourself,
Yes.
which means you might be unconditionally loving someone who has a personality disorder and is going to abuse you. And the way to best be in unconditional love with that person, because it includes yourself, is to say, I'm not going to be in relationship with you. I am unconditionally loving you, and I'm putting you out of my space.
Yes.
And so I feel like that kind of conversation is what doesn't, people think, oh, love just means like rolling
Mhm.
over and allowing everything. That's not what it is.
No.
In
No.
fact, you could be so much more crisp with your boundaries if you
Exactly.
come from a state of unconditional love because you're not feeling guilty because you hate that person or whatever. You love that person and you're trying to figure out where are your boundaries.
Sometimes you have to let people go in a loved relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because the boundaries are so very tied to the task of love.
Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
very tied. In that organization, they now made me a fellow. We have this thing called BART, boundaries, authorities, roles, and tasks. And we understand, and this comes out of psychodynamic literature. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, if you have unsecured boundaries, time,
Yes.
tasks, territory, resources, roles, responsibilities, if those are fuzzy, your clarity on the task just goes away. And if my task is to be there in with you and I lose that,
Yeah.
yeah, task is all blurry.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not there. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Exactly. It's so fun talking with you about this stuff. I was raised by psychodynamic therapists, and one was a psychoanalyst at the Chicago Institute for Psychoanalysis. And so
I got friends that are there right now.
yeah, yeah. And so they probably know my stepmom. So that's really, it's wild talking about this because it feels like a conversation I would have at breakfast. Um, this is really, really nice. I'm curious where you, how you, I mean, I feel like when people listen to our show, they listen from two standpoints. They listen from, oh, what are these people talking about? It's kind of interesting. And then another is like, well, how can I apply this in a practical standpoint? So like a theoretical and a practical standpoint, how can I apply this to my daily life? And I sort of want to ask you, like, so what advice do you have for people who are looking for boundaries or are looking to help their 20-year-old kids thrive?
Yeah, in organizations, this idea of BART is really useful. So it comes from the acronym is associated with the train that goes from San Francisco to Oakland.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
BART,
BART.
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have a train but you don't have any passengers, it's always on late and it's always broken down, it doesn't work. But if you have those other three things, but you have no body, you have no way to get on the train. Or if you have a way to get on the train, but it's nobody's there to drive it, it doesn't function. It doesn't function. It's when you have balance of my boundaries, the authorities, my right to do work, and this is for organizations, the role in which I have, the one that are formal and informal roles, and clarity on tasks. If those are out of balance, stuff doesn't happen. And so when my buddies, I taught some buddies that I was working with the last agency I was at, and they were like, here's BART. They were like, okay, the very first thing you want to do, anybody on here, is to think about what am I doing? I wish they would stop. And as soon as you start pointing fingers, that means the boundaries aren't clear.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as something breaks down, like who does what and where, who has the right responsibilities and roles, and who has the time, the task, and the territory to be able to execute against those things. And if it's unclear, now you have a great way to understand, man, we're kind of broken because now we start pointing, what is Carmen, well, if only so-and-so would, as soon as you start with if only so-and-so would just do this in the, if the R&D guys would only do this, then we could do our thing on the analysis side and stop it. When was the last time you talked to them? Well, they should know. They should know what we want. Oh my God.
Right.
How would they know? Are they mind readers?
Right. Everyone should be psychic, but they shouldn't be psychic.
Exactly. And
So
I think
wanted,
curiosity.
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to swing back where you belong, where you began, very, very richly, where you were talking what you are curious about is sort of how this narrative is going to proceed relative to your becoming adult sons who are because you think this is all going to be really changing on them.
Yeah.
And that reminded me of something I heard yesterday. There's a scholar of the Bible, Dan McClellan, who's very active on TikTok and on YouTube. And I'm not a person of faith. I don't know what that means really, but I'm a person of belief and I'm a person of meaning. That's much, I look for, I'm hungry for meaning.
Yes.
So he said, and he calls himself a Christian. I don't mean that to be like an indirect insult. He is a Christian, but when you hear him talk, he's a PhD biblical scholar, and he will make you totally rethink the Bible and our spiritual traditions. And in fact, because of listening to him, I have actually reread Mark. I hadn't sat down with the Bible in a heck of a long time. Anyway, so what he said, that talking about Christianity is that his expectation is that Christianity will change over the next 2 generations more than it has ever done before. And when he said that, I was driving, I was going, wow, now what does he mean? And he is someone who believes that the Bible has no real inherent meaning, but we each generation imbues it with the meaning that we want to get out of it. So what he's implying is a completely new
Yes.
interrogation of and interpretation of these legacy sacred, I'll use that word, scriptures that have so informed the values of the West. And I just wanted to share that with you. And let me tell you, Dan McClellan is worth many, many listens. He's that good. But anyway, if you have any reactions to that.
I do. It's interesting that you would say that you take a Abrahamic tradition that is over 2,000 years old, and that you have a person saying in 40 years it's going to change more than it has in the prior 2,000 years.
I know.
And I think it has a lot to do with locale. So my wife grew up in west side of Chicago, right? She taught in a K-8 school. She taught sixth graders in South Side. And these kids would come out, and this is the early 90s. Hey, Miss Brown, don't go outside because they shooting. Okay, thank you. But she took them downtown on the L. They went underneath one underground, and the kids freaked out because they had never been on the L underground. It had always been the elevated train, but to go underneath, it scared them.
Yeah.
There was an author in 1960s, 70s talked about, I'm going to get it wrong, but paraphrase, my world is 6 blocks long, right? 6 blocks, 6 by 6 blocks. It was about an inner city kid's experience. But when I look at what's happening in terms of experience, because I think that what Mr. McClellan, Dr. McClellan is talking about is how I experience the world. And I love this idea of interrogation. When for me, it is all about interrogating ideas. That when I think about the sacred text that I had been raised with, even me, and then I have the opportunity to go experience other things, it expands my world. And so that, as horrible as it was, and as many people's lives as it took, COVID, it created a very different relationship with the world. If you think in terms of maps, I spent 20 years with the mapping agency, the U.S. Intelligence Mapping Agency, National Geospatial Intelligence. Maps were two-dimensional at first because they were flat. We had a guess on the lat long. And then we had height, X, Y, and Z. And then we had time. So now you have 4 dimensions. Right. And now you add the internet, which now adds a 5th dimension to the world. And now you have the capacity to work in synchrony and asynchronously with people around the world. And it doesn't really matter when. It just depends on who starts the engagement. And so that asynchronous behavior or synchronous behavior around the internet started. I could have conversations as late as last night. There was a colleague who is in China, and there was colleagues in Chicago. There was colleagues here on the East Coast and colleagues on the West Coast, and we were all having the same conversation about a topic at the same time. It just started with us, which meant that she had to be up at 12 hours early or midnight or whatever it was. But it created a different relationship. And I think that what he might be alluding to, and my takeaway, is that the way that we interrogate the world is now multidimensional.
Yeah. It
is multidimensional. And wait till we go off-world, start having off-world experiences.
Let's talk about that. Okay, I want to back up because this idea, I want to go back and I want to go forward at the same time. At the same time.
Back to the future, baby.
That's right. So I want to back up to this idea of when your world is shrunken, and relative to the world that could be, right? And there's a wonderful cognitive physiology / neuroscience experiment that I just love. Not the result, but that it was done. And the experiment was, you give people fake money. So you have $10 in fake money, and you go to a fake restaurant and you have a fake menu, and you get to order whatever you want for the money that you have.
Okay.
And on the bottom of the menu in small print is a thing that says, by the way, if you're participating in an experiment at this restaurant, everything is half price, and you can go ahead and order twice as much as you thought. Now it's in little print, it's on the bottom. So people who came in and who were given expansive amount of money. Right? Oh, sorry, there were two conditions: given like $10 versus given $30. Right? People who came in and were given $10, they did not see the fine print. They were poor in their funds. They felt in this scarce. They reported feeling like the scarcity of money, and they couldn't see the periphery of the menu. They literally, the eye tracking study showed they didn't even look there. People who were given $30, they looked everywhere. They saved money, even because they had this the idea is they had this expansive experience of not scarcity around money. So they could literally see the sides of the menu. And it suggests that, in fact, your feeling of fear or scarcity, or that it's not going to be okay, could actually constrict your capacity to see opportunities.
Yes, I tell everybody that I work with, at least in the communities, the university communities that I involve, which is the historically Black college community. There's 700 what are called minority serving institutions around the country. That's Hispanic, that's Asian, that's tribal colleges. There are 100 HBCUs. Historically, the one that has been the most underfunded is the one that my son goes to, which is North Carolina A&T State University. From the time from 1987 to 2020, they were underfunded by $3.7 billion, an incredible amount of money. But what I try to say is that if we live in a scarcity, and I say this all the time, if we live in a scarcity environment, you will try to pick apart your choices. But in abundance, if you live in abundance, I mean literally live in abundance, if I give it away, it'll eventually come back, because the intention around what it offers others, that they will then in turn give it to me. I think you talked about loving oneself. Like, how do you create love for your boundaries around love? You can have boundaries, I believe, that are also an abundance. That doesn't mean you can take advantage of me. I will not allow you to take advantage of me, but I can live in abundance where I love you. You're talking about the definition of love. So the 4 definitions, the agape, philo, logos, and there's one more, I can't remember. But if you give love in an agape way, like love for mankind, not love the logic, all. Love for all. Yeah. That I think that your study in abundance really is about what is available to me. Yeah, that's right. Not what is not available to me. And then you see the opportunities, and this comes back to, and that's why we're going to the future with this. This comes back to what this new generation can do, that is build this culture, because if they can come from that place, then their capacity to see these opportunities to shift the culture. And I really think this is like a Moore's law applied to culture, Carmen, what he was saying, right? That the shift in Christianity, it's also the shift in everything. And I think Moore, in fact, predicted that once we get to a plateau with Moore's law, everything else comes shifting after that because of the changes that it produces. So here we go. So absolutely, I think we need to understand that this dying culture, it's like we need to honor it. We need to grieve it. We need to say it served its purpose, and it really did. It did serve its purpose of producing a lot of change and a lot of children who are focused on change. And we need to let it go and move into the next thing. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I'm thinking about without being overtly political, big P, political, small p, about how the U.S. and folks in the U.S. see themselves as political people. It's not the right word, but how we are understanding our political stance closer or further away from power. And I am curious about the need that there is a zero-sum game. If you have it, I don't. Yeah, the zero-sum game thing is the end of that's the dying culture. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's the kids today who are saying, I think rightly, it doesn't have to be, but we can't live, to your point, Julia, we can't live in this old paradigm that keeps us trapped in. But if they get, well, what do I not get? Oh, it's a disaster. And it's a disaster for identity politics as much as it's a disaster for salaries. I mean, the idea that the universe is a pie and we're breaking it up into pieces is wrong. You gotta love Mark Cuban, who's like, DEI, of course I'm going to do because there's money in it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I do that?
Exactly. So I don't know. I'm reminded of something I heard recently. I don't know. I don't think it was in our most recent conversation with Ben, but I just can't remember. But I was talking to someone about issues like these, and the individual said, you know, the thing is that without this zero-sum capitalist hard edge culture, we wouldn't have gotten the internet. So,
Yeah,
or we wouldn't have gotten to the place where we can now see another way. And when he said that,
I think
I
it
was
was Ben
thinking,
because he
I
was
was
talking about
thinking,
materialism.
how could he be right? I think maybe it was Ben.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I'm not sure he's right, but how could, you know, it's an intriguing idea, and it's very Hegelian, I guess. But any reactions to that? Do you think we could
I
have
think it's,
gotten to where we are now? I think it was Ben
Yeah.
with a different, softer, for lack of a better word, perspective on the meaning of our lives.
so does that mean that everything is a competition? Right. I studied Aikido for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you know, the whole idea behind Aikido is, unlike traditional martial arts, instead of this where you are defending and you're ready to strike, it's
Right.
welcoming, right? It is a welcoming art. And so in traditional Aikido, there is no traditional notion of competition. It is flow, it is dance. You're learning and giving at the same time. But then there are the others like, but yeah, they're still going to get me. And so I think it comes down to the suspicious nature of human beings. You have, I don't.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think that's the nature of human beings. I got to tell you, I'm extremely hopeful about the actual nature of human beings, but I think there are generations of trauma for real. That's not a fake thing that gets passed down, and that suppresses our innate um, hopefulness and capacity to deal with problems and curiosity and
Mhm.
I don't think we're innately suspicious if you look at kids who have been raised in an environment of abundance and clarity that they matter, um, with emotionally supportive parents who aren't overly emotionally supportive, you know, who are psychologically aware of development and how it works. Um, they don't seem to be suspicious as much as they might be thoughtful about, you know, who's in their space. So I think that we get warped about what the nature of humanity is. So many people have told me the nature of humanity is that we have to have war. Totally disagree. We have to have anger. We have to have concern about our resources. We have to have a feeling of connection to the people who are closest to us, and a less of a feeling of connection to people who are farther from us. Those are all natural human natural traits. But that doesn't mean we need to come from suspicion. I think that's what happens when we're in this culture. So I'm not sure.
So it's interesting. When I was in Chicago for our dialogues, which literally it's a dialogues. We, you know, people put out position papers, and a bunch of people who are psychoanalytically oriented. We come and talk about what that means. And there was you may remember these people like Winnicott and
Yeah, Winnicott. Yeah,
yeah. So the paranoid schizoid versus the depressive.
yeah.
Most of our lives, we live in a paranoid schizoid space, which is you're bad, I'm good, versus depressive. Like, so where are we in between?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think if we could have leaders, if we could have people who live in a not and for your listeners, not depressed, it's depressive, which means it is not an either or, it's that space in between where I can enjoy my thinking and my feeling at the same time, which I think that we separate our thinking and feeling
Yes,
inappropriately.
yes.
um, if we can enjoy our thinking and feeling at the same time, we have the capacity for what? Empathy.
Yeah. And
Right.
beyond empathy, empathy is like square one. We have the capacity for love.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think they listen to folks like the three of us. They go, yeah, love, whatever.
Yeah.
They're still going to take my shit. Right. But then you weren't really going into this with integrity, which I
Yeah,
think is
right.
another part of this
Yeah.
puzzle.
That's right.
Yeah. all throughout this conversation, I've been thinking about my reaction to the Star Wars movies
Mm.
and Star Trek, where, I mean, these people have got every single technology figured out and they're still going to war?
Yeah,
What?
right.
WTF, what is going on here? So
Yeah.
I was always, as much as I love the movies, I was always quite disappointed by how they imagined the progress of humanity.
Yes.
It made me quite sad. Although
Yeah.
I guess technically Star Wars movies occur a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So whatever, whatever.
Yeah, Star Trek does a better job, I think, of showing this idea of, there's civilizations that aren't quite advanced, and they even go back to like the modern era on Earth, and they're like, oh, these people are savages.
So,
So
so what's the opposite of love,
hmm,
right?
I think it's fear.
Exactly. And if we spend a tremendous amount of time outside of first step empathy, we end up projecting our own internal stuff on other people and treating them as if it's a real thing.
Yeah.
They are bad. We've
Yeah.
othered them. And when you
I know.
continue to other people, it is a way for you not to feel crazy. Remember the schizoid paranoid. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to put it on somebody else so I don't feel crazy because I don't trust them, which means I really maybe don't trust myself. And if I
Right.
don't
So
trust myself, I have to make them the bad object.
There's a guy I
that's
talked
correct.
to when I was wearing my former CIA hat, which still fits, sadly. I just don't know. But and I think he's a future guest for us, Julia. He's working on a PhD, and what he is studying is antagonism.
Yeah.
And so he's working on a political science kind of thing. And he says, before conflict, there is antagonism, and antagonism is poorly understood. So that's where he's setting himself off to figure that out, because antagonisms can simmer for a long time, seemingly under control, and then explode. Or you can have very sharp antagonisms like the French and the Germans, and cross our fingers, we think everyone's gotten over that now. So I just thought that was an interesting word to throw into this continuum. We have empathy, we have love, we have fear, we have antagonism, which is like the little brother of hatred. But why does it happen?
Well, people are sorting out. I mean, people are sorting this stuff out. And I think that it is not the case that it's not well understood. It's just that he maybe hasn't read the psychoanalytic literature.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I will point him to it because I think that would be a good thing for him to know, that
Especially to point him towards object relations theory.
Absolutely.
whatever
Yeah.
that means, object relations theory,
Yep.
writing it
Winnicott,
down.
Fairbairns, and the like.
All those guys.
Neon,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah, because that's all about the development of the self in relationship to the world.
Yep.
And this is where we get antagonism.
Because the opposite of the antagonist is the protagonist. And when
Mhm.
I am the author, I am the protagonist, pitting myself against the antagonist, the
Yeah.
other,
The author
Mhm.
and the other.
other. Exactly. And if I'm the author of my story, and unless I do it with love and integrity, I have to antagonize that the other has to be out there.
Because you have
Right.
to keep confirming that, because you're actually scared that you're not the author of your story. Because the
Yes.
big secret is that the unconscious mind is in control of the whole thing. And you
Exactly.
can't possibly let it filter up and do its dance. And so you have to keep affirming, I'm in charge, I'm in charge, I'm in fucking charge.
Yep. And I'm the good one.
And I'm not only in charge, I'm the benevolent dictator of my life and the life of those around me.
Exactly. And I give to them, and they will, and if they don't, they must be the bad object. They must be the
Yes.
bad one.
Yeah.
And with Carmen in the psychoanalytic literature, it would suggest that this object relation, it starts at the mother space. Like
Mhm.
as soon as you like, if you don't have a good object in the mom, in the mother, Now
Yeah.
it's she becomes the bad object, or the
Yeah.
parent becomes the bad object, and I have to dump all my thing. And if you don't have that good love, and I don't think we're not talking about romantic love, we're talking about philo love, like
Mhm.
familial love. You end up with, I think Steve Blank, that is, he talks about he can find a good, I've heard him say this, that he can find a good CEO if they had a traumatic, he talks about if they had a bad upbringing. They had a
No,
bad,
he actually
bad
said that
family.
to me when he interviewed me for his Sirius XM
Oh,
show.
that's right. You did talk about
Yeah,
that,
and we talked about it because I had a very turbulent childhood. And
Me
right?
his theory
too.
was you sink or swim. You
Yeah.
either develop the emotional intelligence and resilience inside of you to navigate it, or you drown.
Which, by the way, I would like to say, even though I had a similarly difficult upbringing, it doesn't work for everyone, right? So, like, didn't work for my sister, and so I don't want people to have run away. I'm always afraid people will run away with the idea. Well, we should like actually kind of be shitty to our kids.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
exactly. No,
important.
I mention this, and when I give my talk, and I always say, I'm not suggesting anything like that whatsoever.
But
But
Well,
yeah, well,
and in the future, if, I think as we start to heal our trauma and stuff, that will be a different story.
toward the end of my CIA career, we had these helicopter parents, and we started getting phone calls of the parents of children,
Oh,
well, adult children who had gotten unsatisfactories or whatever on their performance appraisal reports. The parents were actually calling in to complain about their child's job evaluation. And we are like,
what the actual fuck?
well, I do not know what to do with this.
first of all, how'd you get my number?
Yes,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Exactly.
This
Who
is
did you talk
not in my guidebook.
to?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to say, one of the reasons why I thought Tyrone would be a great guest is that, I mean, we maybe had 3 minutes of interaction,
Yeah, that.
and he just came at me with so much energy and love that I just went, whoa, who is this guy? I got to get to know him better.
Awesome.
Thank
That
you.
was the sum total of my thought process,
Thank you.
which is, if only we could have that response with everybody that we
Yeah.
meet. And yet there are sometimes people that, I know just the other day traveling through the airport, and I won't get into any details. I got adopted by somebody who I go, I have to ditch this person. At my
Well,
first opportunity, it was horrible. And I
I
felt
mean,
very guilty about it too. And I
you're
didn't
just having a
technically,
boundary. You're
I
just
had to
having a
set I
boundary.
set a
Yeah.
boundary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tyrone, your nature, it seems to me, from the little I have learned about you in this conversation, is effusively loving, effusively positive. We did say you're an extrovert, but definitely it's not just extroversion, because I know people who are extroverts who aren't like that. It's really positive energy. So people must want to be with you a lot. And does that create, I mean, I know we have to wrap up, and I'm hoping
Oh
we can
no,
do
no
some
problem.
Oh, no,
dancing
no, no. I
before.
was, yeah,
But
no, we're
does
good.
that create, I'm just curious, in your interpersonal relationships, does that create a thing? Like sometimes this happens to me because I have a lot of positive energy, that after I give a talk or something, people are like attracted to me like a magnet, and I have to be like, okay, I'm going now.
Well, I try to be as generous as possible, but the way that I set the boundary is to be curious about them and say, so talk to me, tell me about
Yeah.
what you're curious about.
Yeah, me too. And then they're
Yeah.
talking, and then they're talking about themselves, and it works great.
Right. I don't have
Right.
to, I just stop talking and listening.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Because I think extroversion is not just the right. It
Yeah.
is being attuned to the other, not just attuned
Mhm.
to myself. And I've been trained over 30 years by some really good people just to attune to the other.
Right.
And I don't get it right all the time at all. And trust me, I don't get it right. But I try to stay in tune to the other and myself. And in my world, and that using myself as a barometer of the experience between me and another. So if I'm feeling lost, I can say, I don't understand what's going on. Please help me. And I don't
Yeah.
have to blame another person. I can say that in love and say, I don't know what's going on. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me. And I'm feeling confused.
Yeah.
And I think my sense is that when you say things like I'm feeling confused or I'm feeling upset or I don't know what's going on, it is a gift. You can't give it in antagonism. You have to give it in love. Like, I don't know what's going on and I'm confused and I need your help. And so when people kind of come up and they say, "Hey Smith, can I talk to you?" Because I have people that call me up all the time. I just did a piece. I was in a venture program, a cohort. I was in cohort 6, cohort 7 comes up, and they asked me to come back and say, "Hey, what'd you think?" And I just told people I was just being myself, just like I'm on here. And I had people like, "Can I have a LinkedIn with you?" Because and then one guy was like, "Yo, can I talk to you? Because I think that you have something up." And I'm like, "Okay." But I think that when you give abundantly, you have to be prepared for people to take advantage of your abundance. No, to take advantage, not as in, so what I'm looking for, advantage, not they're being vultures or being parasitic, but
To
advantage,
receive the
exactly
abundance. Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
you have to be
yeah.
prepared. And so you don't put out what you ain't ready to get back.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a great boundary. Thank you. Thank you. And
So-
can you tell us what that, sorry, Carmen, I have to ask
Ah.
about his background. Tyrone,
Um,
tell me about the Matrix. What do you think the Matrix is?
Wow. So about 1996, when the Matrix first came out,
Yeah.
in the psychoanalytic work that I was doing, it's like, do you take the red pill or the blue pill? And it's in that work that people discover where they are. And
Yeah.
so I just thought it was a cool. It is always a part. It's my wife's favorite, one of her favorite movies. I just thought it was a very cool background, and it beats the one that looks like I'm in somebody's office when I'm not really in anybody's
Yeah,
office.
exactly. No, it's a great one. It's a very
That's
good one.
But
So
this was
Tyrone,
fun. Thank you.
yeah, no, we
Yeah.
just, you know, I have to say even better than I expected. I mean, I knew you were going to be energetic, but all the other dimensions of you were, a pleasant gift from the universe. You just sort of were there and you presented yourself. So we know you said you work for historically Black colleges and universities, but is there anything else you want to say about what you're doing or your main where you're hanging your hat or whatever?
So
Or
I
not?
work. Yeah, that's fine. I work for an organization that is adjacent to the National Security Innovation Network and the DoD, working to solve really hard national security problems. And when I talk about national security problems, this will make sense, Karma. It's not about pew pew pew. It's about water. It's about communications. It's about all those other things that create a space for security. And so we
Right.
take those problems, we give them to college students, the ones that are at the big ones like the Stanfords and the others. But when I believe that there is an untapped national resource that sits at the historically Black college and university space, right? My kid, he was a COVID kid, and he got hit a little hard emotionally. He's like, yeah, whatever. I just need to get out of high school. But he was smart enough to go to a Stanford and Michigan's and those kinds. But he ended up in a space where he now feels like he can be held and he's comfortable and he knows he can let his brilliance shine. And I want spaces for other kids to do that. And so I do that. I teach. I work with startups. I help to mentor startups. I just generally like to be in a space where if I can, there's a gospel song that says, if I can help somebody along the way, that's just a part of the refrain. That's my job.
Right.
That's what I do.
Yeah, it's pretty good, pretty amazing.
Thank you. Thank you both. This was great.
Oh,
And
goodness.
Carmen, I've been tracking you since you wrote your book.
Uh-huh.
Not passively on the side. People read,
Yeah.
and the fact that you responded on LinkedIn, so hey Smith, maybe I'll get a chance to see you in Dallas.
Yeah.
And now 3 weeks later, I'm having a conversation with you
Yeah.
and Julia. This is kind of dope.
Yeah.
It is
yeah.
dope.
This is kind of dope.
Speaking of dope, before we go, I'm gonna try to see if this is a good time to dance. So
Oh,
Should dance?
yeah, I haven't let go of that, Carmen. So dancing is dancing because we mute the music. So
that
on
we
the
don't
screen
ban copyright.
we don't like get copyright infringement, but at the same time we all simultaneously listen to the same song and dance and film ourselves doing it, and it is very goofy and very fun. And are you up for this?
I am. I love to
Okay.
dance.
So what's
Especially
your
when I'm sitting in
song?
a chair.
Yeah, and you can, and we get out of our chairs, and so
What's
you're
your,
invited
well,
too. if
he
you want.
doesn't have to get out of his chair.
No, you don't
So-
have to, but I'm going to, and Carmen,
Okay.
you don't have to either. So what's
So what's
what's
your
your
song?
favorite dance song that comes to mind?
Anything with Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh,
so
well,
like
you know,
WWF.
September maybe?
That
yeah,
works.
September.
That works.
Okay, so that was successful.